participants. We might have some joining us as I continue to talk. We are recording this and we'll post this on the YouTube channel for everybody. So if you have folks at your EPP that couldn't join us and would like to watch the webinar, they're more than welcome to do that. So I wanted to start with sort of what a stipulation virtual visit is. So why you're on this call. So you have received this invite because you are one of the next 3 semesters that have stipulation visits that we are currently scheduling or have scheduled. So that means that you had a 2-year term from your original AC decision, and you had a stipulation visit. So that meant you had 1 stipulation in a standard, but the standard was overall met. And you are going to have a virtual visit in the semester 2 years out, which is about 18 months it winds up being for the next semester. So your teams are consisting of 2 people. So one's a lead and one's a reviewer. And those folks are the same reviewers that we use in regular site visit reviews. So those are folks that have been on site visits in the past. So they are trained and they're volunteers and they have been trained just like all the other reviewers. So they come from our joint pool. If you are part of a joint state agreement with us, with CAEP, there'll be a state person also included on the correspondence of your stipulation visit, as well as present on the virtual visit or on the phone call. So your state people are still participating in the virtual visit and the lead up to the virtual visit. So they're still there for you if you're a joint state. So the process for CAEP is a little bit different. So your template opens in Ames 18 months prior to your visit semester. So we've actually opened up through, I believe, fall of 21. And so if your visit is during that time, your shell is already open and you'll be able to see it in Ames. And just a little note to make sure that you toggle the semester tab at the top to make sure that you're looking at the correct semester of your visit, because we have prior information in there for your prior visits as well. So just make sure that that's toggled correctly. Your virtual site visit date is selected and communicated with Alexis Neal. So she's the one that's organizing the actual virtual visit. And so she needs a date for when that's going to occur during the semester. Your stipulation documentation is due to CAEP early in the semester of your review, and there's not a specific date for that, but we like to have them at the beginning of the semester so we can set the teams and you can set your date based on that so that we can move forward with your virtual visit. So once that documentation is received and your date is set, the team's formed, and the team writes a formative report, and it's a condensed report. So it's not a full site visit report, and I'll have an example as we go through. And then the formative report sent to CAEP, the CAEP case manager for review. And so there is a review and edit process just like there is in a regular site visit. And then your virtual site visit occurs. And that can be set up through a Zoom meeting, and CAEP can support creating those Zoom meetings, or if your lead has access to Zoom or GoToMeeting, they can set them up with you as well. So either way, CAEP can create those meetings, or your lead may be able to do that as well. And then your final site visit report to CAEP is due, the team report is due 7 days after the virtual visit. And the final virtual report is sent to the EPP. So it comes to CAEP just for a quick review, and then it goes out to the EPP no later than 14 days from the virtual visit. And then all decisions go to the Accreditation Council. So all those recommendations that are coming from site visits go to the Accreditation Council for final decision. So if you have a visit in the fall, you will go to spring AC, and if you have a decision recommendation in the spring, it will go to fall AC. So again, teams are not making the final decisions, they are making recommendations to the Accreditation Council. So if you have questions during this process, who do you contact? And that's me. I'm the case manager for stipulation visits, and my information is on the screen, my email, and that's the easiest way to get in touch with me if you have questions as you go through the process for your stipulation visit. So one of the big questions is, what do I address in my stipulation report? And so you are only responding to the stipulation in your report. So in order for you to have had a stipulation visit, you have one stipulation, but the standard was overall met. You may have multiple stipulations in other standards. So you might have a stipulation in standard 1 and the standard's met. You may have a stipulation also in standard 3 and the standard was met. So you'd have to address each of the stipulations that you have in any of the met standards. So, so an example that I'm putting in here is that, let's say my EPP has a stipulation in standard 3 for component 3.1 and several AFIs and other standards. So you're only addressing the stipulation tag to component 3.1 because that's where the stipulation is. And you do not need to address any other AFIs and any of the other standards because you'll be addressing those in your annual report each year. So you're not addressing any of the other AFIs in any of the other standards, just where the stipulation is. So whatever component the stipulation was tagged, that's what you're addressing in your stipulation report. So in AIMS, when you log into AIMS and look at your shell, there is an introductory section, so a brief review for the EPP. You can take that from your previous report, so just a brief kind of summary of what your EPP looks like. And you can take that again from the previous report. And then it will show where your stipulation was. So in this case, in my example, the stipulation was in 3.1, and the stipulation and rationale will show in AIMS. And then there's a space for you to address that stipulation and upload any evidences that you have to support your narrative. So that is for that particular stipulation visit, that was the only stipulation. And so that's all that needs to be addressed moving forward. So when you see that, that is not, doesn't include anything else. You don't have to do anything else except for the stipulation in the standard that was met. So if you have AFIs in that same standard, so let's say in standard 3, you have the stipulation in 3.1, but then you have AFIs in 3.2 and 3.3 and sort of other components within standard 3, you do not have to address those AFIs within the standard. So again, the standard was met and you just have that stipulation. So the stipulation is what you're focusing on. You don't have to address any of the AFIs even within the standard. That the stipulation occurs because the standard was met. So again, you'll be addressing all of your AFIs for your entire report in annual reporting every year moving forward until your next full visit. Okay, so a question about the reviewers. How many reviewers are on my team, and there are 2 for stipulation cases. And again, I said one was a lead and one's a site visitor. And the stipulation reviewers are assigned in the same manner as a regular site team and follow the same process and protocol. So I just wanted to reiterate that these are not special reviewers. They're reviewers that have been through the process before for standard visits. And we try and get for stipulation and probation cases members of the team that have served on previous site team reviews so that they are very familiar with the process and the protocol. So what does a virtual visit, kind of look like? And so I wanted to kind of go through a little bit of some of the steps that are needed to have your virtual visit. So when your virtual visit, the site team reviews your stipulation report in AIMS. So that's kind of where the team is starting to work. They will write a formative report and share it with you. And then the lead will organize a Zoom meeting with CAEP or individually and share call information. So they will provide that call-in information to the EPP. And then the team lead will communicate with the EPP about specific people that may, need to be on that virtual visit or on that phone call for things that need to be verified or for questions. So again, you're not setting up multiple sets of interviews. You're generally having one sort of meeting with the folks that are in the room that are there for questions or verification. So again, it would be just specific to that stipulation. So it may be that you might have a faculty member or a department head or a candidate, and it depends on where the stipulation was. But generally, it's the core group for the EPP. So it's the CAEP coordinator and the folks that have written the report and that know the most about the process, and then specific folks that could help address that particular stipulation. So during the scheduled time, the team and the EPP meet over that phone call, and they review the report, they answer questions, and interview any key individuals or groups and clarify any existing questions that are kind of out there for the team. So a visit can last between 1 and 4 hours, depending on how many stipulations the report is addressing and how many questions the team still needs to be answered or clarified during that process. But between the lead and the EPP, the schedule for that site visit, the virtual visit, will be kind of worked out. So before the meeting, there will be, the team lead will let the EPP know where there are still outstanding questions and what needs to be addressed still, and who they might need to interview. So that's done before the actual phone call. So we've had some stipulation visits that last closer to 4 hours because they had multiple stipulations and they would need multiple sort of groups to kind of come in for verification purposes. And then we've had some that last, an hour to an hour and a half with one stipulation and just answering those questions. So that really depends on the length of your report and what questions the team may still have. So the formative report that the lead and the site visitor, your site team, are completing looks like this. So it is a template form. The narrative is where the preliminary analysis of evidence related to the stipulations. That's the team's narrative about what they're seeing and description. And then evidence that's consistent and inconsistent. So that again looks like a standard site visit report. So again, what evidence did you provide and what evidence was consistent with that stipulation and rectifying it, and which things were not consistent with that particular stipulation and addressing it. And then a rationale for continuing or removing the stipulation. So again, when the team makes that recommendation, what's the reason for why they're making the recommendation they're making? And they have 3 options. So a team has basically 3 options. And so one is to continue the stipulation. So you can continue the stipulation, as is. So basically no movement has been made in the 2 years. The second is to remove the stipulation altogether. So again, if the EPP has provided information that now meets that component and they can remove the stipulation altogether, they can recommend that. Or they can actually continue it as an AFI. So that would be a situation where you may have a stipulation where you didn't provide any information or data or evidence in your previous visit, and now you have a plan, you've moved forward, but you may not have a complete set of evidence or data to have it totally removed. So it could be an AFI. And if it continues as an AFI, then you would be addressing that AFI again in your annual reports moving forward. So just like you would have addressed it as a stipulation, you would be addressing it as an AFI moving forward. So those are the 3 options that a team has in recommending to the Accreditation Council for that decision. So in the past few semesters that we've had stipulation visits, the majority of them have either removed or continue as an AFI. So for almost all the EPPs that we've worked through stipulation visits, they've done some work moving away from that stipulation. So so we've either had it removed altogether or continued as an AFI. So the team writes their final report, and the difference between the final report and the formative report basically is an addition of 1 section. So they may edit the narrative a little bit. They might clarify some of the evidences and move them from inconsistent to consistent, for example. And they're also adding a section on who was on the phone call. So who is in attendance of the virtual meeting? So that's important to note who is in the room and who's on the call. And then if there are any additional evidences provided, they can reference those as well. And then they're making their preliminary recommendations. So the stipulation case goes to the Accreditation Council for final decision, again, the following semester. So there are only two basic reports that are going to come from the stipulation visit. One is the formative that you're going to get before the phone call. And the second is the final report, which just includes any edits and the folks that were on the actual call. And so those are the two reports, and those will be loaded into Ames. And they are loaded not as they're loaded as a template. So they are documents that are listed and uploaded, but they're not in the same format as a traditional visit. So you're not going to get a lot of automated messages for different things. They're just going to be loaded in there manually because Ames only holds the templates for those two final reports. So the formative and the final. So I wanted to give you time for questions. And so I know some people have put questions in the question box. So open to answer any questions that you may have. And again, you're welcome to email me at any point. I am the case manager, so the ones that are going through this semester, if your reports are in, we're in that process right now of your teams are set and we're working forward. And if you are in a subsequent semester, you'll be following the guidelines that I laid out. But again, if you have any questions, you can email me or you can type them into the chat bar. No questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, wait.
Oh, there's a question.
Whoops.
We can use this. So we're gonna, these are specific questions to EPP, so we will answer those individually. There's not a general question. So I will answer those individually. Thank you very much for attending.